Men, what was your worst date? Mine was a girl I took to a seafood dinner who decided to get a to-go order for her cousin and son and then add the cost to my bill. Her to-go order for them was shrimp and lobster. When I got the bill, I paid for my dinner plus tip and left her the bill to pay the rest. Never talking to her again. Reddit Opinion 1. It wasn't a date, but this person thought it was. I volunteer at my local humane society, and there are many volunteers there. I got a new volunteer who normally worked the cat area helping me with adoptions. We help people with the adoptions. I immediately realized that she had a condition, like maybe Asperger's, but she was very sweet and nice, so I was always very friendly and cordial. Before I knew it, she was always scheduled with me in adoptions. We sign ourselves up where there are openings. I could tell she liked me, but then she went and found me on Facebook. I have a very common name and am not easy to find in a big city. Then, the next shift, she told me it was her birthday and her parents were taking her to Captain Marvel 3D, and she could bring a friend. So I agreed to it. It was very awkward because when I got there, she signed us in on Facebook and put us on a date. The rest of the night was awkward. I waited about a week to tell her that although I'd love to be her friend, I wasn't interested in anything more. I could tell she was hurt. Reddit Opinion 2. I delivered pizzas to a certain hotel quite regularly, and the cute girl I was at the front desk, I was acquainted with her before through a friend asked if I wanted to get a drink. I was very happy about the offer. I was a little heavy then and was glad for some company. It turns out it was more of a 20-session about her ex. I tried to intersperse something here or there or change the subject, but everything had to be about him. After she left, I felt a sigh of relief, and the bartender put a Jager bomb in front of me and poured himself one, then just gave me the who glad that's over look. It was quite awkward every time I went to the hotel for my job, and she'd ask for a drink. I had to pretend to be sober. I just realized this isn't even close to my worst date. Strap in. A couple of years before the story above took place, I had been seeing someone casually. We would normally meet up after each of us got off work, have drinks and laughs, and return to mine or her apartment. It was a good deal. We enjoyed each other's company, and the physical chemistry was strong. She left on a 6-week trip overseas, and we talked occasionally. I started to miss having her around, and thought maybe I should be taking this more seriously. When she returned, we decided to go on our first proper date in the 4 months we'd seen each other. We go to the restaurant, and she gets strangely hostile before the waiter even brings us our appetizer. I got a very direct and accusing, "How many people did you sleep with while I was away? Did you sleep with that register girl at your work?" It came out of left field for me, and the answer was no. I didn't know where she were, but it kind of felt wrong to me. The conversation changed and became pleasant again. Then again, unprompted, she said, "My friends don't like you." All I could think was, that's too bad. I like them. I'm starting to feel something pretty wrong at this point. We went to Guardians of the Galaxy, and she's still negative. That movie was stupid. I fell asleep during it. Let's go home and have a drink then. We're at the apt pool. Again, it's accusations about work girl. I'm tired at this point. So let's go inside. The argument somehow turns into kissing and more. Not so bad, right? We had sex, and I lasted an embarrassingly short amount of time. It had been 6 weeks, okay? She was furious, and for once, on the date, it wasn't unfounded. We go back to the pool with drinks, and she's still grilling me about work girl. I finally realized she was projecting a guilty conscience, and I asked, "Did you sleep with somebody?" Her. I don't know how to answer that. Me. I don't care if you did. You're not my girlfriend. Warning if you can be grossed out fairly easily. Now is the time to stop reading. Her attitude improved after the initial shock. We return and start having sex again, but something is very wrong. I can feel something rubbing against a part of the head of my penis during strokes until, eventually, it becomes painful. I stop and look down. Part of my head looks like someone took a light sander to it. Think like a scraped knee. She somehow blames me. I calm her down, reach into her cervix, and press on the object. She says she can't feel what I'm pressing on, and I tell her it's a foreign body and she has to see an obstetrics and gynecology soon. The next morning, I drive her back in complete silence for 20 minutes. The only thing I said was, "Please see an OB." I got a text a few hours later saying it was a week. Old tampon, and they removed it. Spent the next 10 days letting my dick heal and putting antibiotic ointment on it. That was the worst date. Reddit Opinion 3. I once met up with an online date and went to Red Lobster. Pretty girl. Pretty decent convo leading to our meetup. So I was hopeful. After about 5 minutes, she pulls out her phone, which is normally fine. However, she remained glued to it for the next 20 minutes. I tried to continue the conversation, but her responses became more and more limited. Eventually, I got fed up and excused myself to the restroom. I caught the waitress on my way, paid for my meal portion, and left without another word. It took her 20 minutes to text me and ask where I went. I told her I didn't want to interrupt the date with her phone. Reddit Opinion 4. Knew this chick from a mutual friend. Numbers exchange and we text for a few days. The conversation is going well. We decided to meet up. That weekend we link up and the vibe is good. Talking, laughing, walking around downtown, bar hopping, etc. She tells me her friends, and we should join them to keep drinking. Cool. As soon as we linked with his friends, her vibe turned 180. She didn't introduce me to her friends, and then I got the cold shoulder for the next 60 minutes. Even her friends were trying to start convos, include me. As we leave, she starts bashing dudes, how men are not shit, and they only want one thing, etc. I am confused because that's not how our night went, and honestly, I wasn't with it. I quietly pull her aside and tell her thanks for the night, but I will leave. She starts yelling in the street. Why? She doesn't understand. We were having a good time, etc. So I kept it 100 and told her how she acted, and I was not with it and just walked away. She walks behind me, yelling my name and to not go. I get in my car and dip. I proceeded to get 6 phone calls in a row, then a string of texts ranging from "I'm a piece of shit for embarrassing her" to "she was going to let me fuck that night," etc. Oren introduced me to her a year or so later somewhere else, and she tried to exchange information again, and I told her no, I'm good. She got upset again. Reddit Opinion 5. This may be long. Back in 2003, I recently moved to Charlotte, NC. I decided to sign up for Match.com and try online dating for the first time. Started messaging a few girls and eventually made a connection and set a date. We decided to meet at P.F. Chang's. We had discussed that it would be casual, so she showed up in an evening gown. First flag. She was super gorgeous and looked great in the gown, but also looked completely out of place. Fight or flight kicked in, but she was hot, so I stayed and fought. She stood beside me at the bar and ordered 2 glasses of wine. One she immediately downed. The second she took a sip and turned to me and said, "Hi." Second flag, kind of. We had some awkward small talk, and I mentioned her evening gown. She told me she collects them and decided to wear one tonight to dazzle me. Third flag. But I'm staying in this. We were seated at a table, and as the server walked up, she ordered a bottle of wine. Fourth flag. Okay, she likes wine. And she's hot. I'm still in it. We have more awkward small talk and eventually order food, and by the time I have finished the first beer that I had ordered while back at the bar, she has already finished the bottle of wine and ordered another. Fifth flag. And now I am planning my escape plan. I stand and ask if she knows where the restrooms are, and as she points in a direction behind me, I turn to look, and I feel a stabbing pain in my right ass cheek, which makes me cringe in pain. I grab my ass as I turn to see what the fuck just bit me, and she is giggling her ass off. Also, she is holding a 5-inch long pin, which she used to stab my ass. 6th flag, and I am done. Fuck this. Don't stick your dick in crazy. I walk to the bathroom, go in one stall, drop my pants, and do a hand sweep of my right ass cheek, and my hand comes back bloody. Fuck my life. I use toilet paper and apply pressure to eventually stop the bleeding. I zip up and stare at myself in the mirror as I wash my hands and have a Pulp Fiction moment, where I say to myself, okay, go back out there. Tell her this evening is over and that you are going home. Don't fucking ever do this online dating shit, no more. So I walk out and find the server. I pay the bill and close the check. I tell the server to hold off serving anything until I am finished talking with my date and walking to the door. She agrees. Walking up to the table, I notice people giving me the hairy eyeball and realize that my date is silently sobbing. I am the asshole in this situation. But maybe they didn't see the assault on my ass, but maybe only the death glare I gave her as I held my ass cheek. I sat down and asked, why is she crying? She said that she fucked up by drinking so much wine, and she thought she was being cute and funny, poking me with the hat pin. She said it's an antique and she collects those too. I told her that I was pretty shocked when she stabbed me with it and that my ass was bleeding where she stabbed me. I told her that this evening, I got off on the wrong foot, that I had already paid the bill and that we should try it again another time, not ever. With that, she snapped out of her sobbing quietly and began yelling at me. Wait, you leaving? I said, look, the evening has taken a bay and I just want to go. She stood up and yelled, no one leaves me. I leave them and started marching to the restaurant door, forgetting that there were 3 steps she had to walk down towards the restaurant entrance. She took a tumble down the stairs, purse flying, pashmina wrapped around her foot and landed hard on the bottom step. As I stood there, I was like, what the fuck? Could this get any fucking worse? And it did. She started crying and holding her ankle. The manager came running, as well as the off-duty paramedic. They started working on her there, icing and elevating her leg because she might have broken her ankle. The paramedic called 911, and within minutes, the ambulance was there. They got her on the gurney while taking her out the door of P.F. Chang's to the ambulance. Throughout this whole scene, I never said a word. I was just an observer, hoping this was all a shitty dream, and hoping that as the ambulance doors closed, I could just walk to my car unnoticed. Nope, not so lucky. She started screaming for her boyfriend, the guy she'd been dating. Everyone looked at me. I started to say, wait, hold on. I'm not her boyfriend. When the paramedic cut me off and said, they are taking her to Presbyterian Medical Center. Follow them. I got in my car and was taking my time, but the ambulance was fucking waiting for me. I pulled up behind them and flashed my lights and they took off. Throughout the drive to the hospital, I thought of just going home and felt responsible for at least seeing this nightmare through to the end. It was a light night at the ER, and she was getting the full treatment from everyone because she was gorgeous and dressed in an evening gown. She had x-rays which showed no broken bones, so they put her in an air cast and crutches. When she was released, I was there to take key. She couldn't drive her car, which was still at the restaurant. We drove silently for the most part, except when she had to tell me where to turn. We eventually pulled up to her house, and I had to help her out of the car and up to her front door, where she asked me to come in. I said the evening was eventful, but I had to go. Then said, well, the evening doesn't have to be a complete disaster. Come on in, sit back on the couch, and let me take care of you with my mouth. I ran off that porch laughing hysterically like Curly from the Three Stooges until I got in my car and hauled ass out of there. I deleted my account and never used Match. Come again. Reddit Opinion 6. Oh, I have one. So I went on a date with a girl I worked with. She was half Indian. The date itself went well. Dinner, drinks, etc. Then it comes to the end of the night and her life turns up to take her home. It was her mom. It was not a problem. We were in our only 20s and 20s at the time. But it turns out her mom was massively racist. To this day, I've no idea what she screamed at me and the girl as she dragged her away and into the car, as it was all in high-pitched Hindi, other than she called me a white fuckhead. Not the worst thing I've been called. I asked for an explanation a few days later, and it turns out the girl's father was white, and even though they divorced over 8 years prior, her mother was still somewhat bitter. We didn't have another date. Reddit opinion 7. I was on a date with a friend's friend. I didn't know her, only seeing her around from time to time. Never talked to her before, so my friend hooked us up for a date. She looked decent, so I went for it. As I picked her up, everything was fine. Took her to dinner, and as we ate, she suddenly started going about having the shits rally and did not stop talking about it. Even after she had a 22-minute toilet break, I still am a regular at that place, and she was the kind of person who couldn't whisper. So the whole one, half we've been there. She probably talked about having the shits for 85% of the time, including the toilet. Don't think she stopped talking in the toilet. I wasn't embarrassed. I felt more like I disrespected this restaurant with me taking her there. Reddit opinion 8. Usually, I think of worst dates as a way for people to shift blame in a bad situation, but I know this was 110% my fault. When I was in my last year of high school, a buddy suggested we go and see the new James Bond movie. I think it was Spectre. Me? Yeah, that's good. Who else is going? He said, well, I'm going to bring my girlfriend Kay, but I know it also wants to go, and I want you to go. Just the 4 of us. So I'd found myself set up on a double date with all I knew quite well and could see myself dating, but I explored the avenue. The movie was pretty good, and I kept turning around to see if she was enjoying it. All smiles until a specific scene. The main guy gets a drill put into the side of his skull, and she was very squeamish about this, with his head tucked into his knees, etc. This was my time to shield him with an arm around the back of his neck while still watching the movie to see what would happen. The end bang, I don't remember whether it was in the scene or just something in the theater popped, but she and I jumped, resulting in her head cock in the back and my arm cocking forward. Clocked her square in the temple. She turned around and made an "oh" whimper, then slid across the chair away from me to watch the movie. Never dated again, and any interaction with that group of friends would result in remember when Rob with the hair fucking clocked T on a date. It was not my finest hour. Too long didn't read. Went on a date with a longtime friend. Sucker punched her in the temple. Didn't have sex. Reddit opinion 9. This didn't happen to me, but it happened some time back. I was a waiter at a high-end restaurant. It was a special occasion place for most ordinary folk. We had a few regulars where money wasn't an issue, but a table for 2 for dinner would normally end around £150. One night, while on shift, a guy arrived and told me he'd got a reservation for 2 and that he was meeting a first date with a generally liked. He seemed to sit for an hour in the bar and had a couple of drinks for Dutch courage before coming to me and asking to get his coat as he thinks she stood him up. Just then, this woman came, drives, and I think she's the most undignified and rude person I've encountered. No apology. No not. Her body language showed language that she ordered the most expensive champagne cocktail while looking at the menus. I took them to the table and asked whether they were ready to. They weren't quite there and wanted the wine list. The kind man said, "I'll let the lovely lady choose while I go to the bay." Room. He left and she went straight to the fine Bordeaux and selected a 965-pound bottle of wine. The cellar is in the same direction as the bathrooms, so I conveniently hovered around with the Petrus red wine until a nice man came out of the bay. Room. I explained the wine that was chosen and subtly dropped in the price, and I watched his face drain of color. I could tell he wasn't comfortable, but I suggested a wine of around £30, which he accepted as more suited. When I presented the wine decanted to the table, I made a big show and said, "Madame, the 1980-ish I forget the year Petrus. Would you like to try?" She, of course, accepted and did so with this. Course. She said the wine was delicious, and only me and he knew that usually a 30-pound bottle. When I took payment for the e-bill, there was definitely bro code eye contact and a certain smugness. She still had the attitude of some princess. I do hope he banged her before he told her, and I hope he got someone who is kind and respectful to service staff and the person they're supposed to be dating. Reddit opinion 10. So this particular date changed my entire lists. It's not a first date or anything. Probably fourth or fifth. We went to the Loca Cook, off early in the afternoon for free food and booze. About an hour later, she starts discussing the need to get married, and she wants to go back to her home state, and we would have a good family there for her child. She moved to my state after we first met at a friend's wedding a few weeks ago, and there were some red flags early on. But at times she seemed like a good person, but left some big parts of her life. So back to the date. After the marriage talk, I figured we should probably move on and leave this place, and maybe it'd go away, and it was just the beer talking. So, a group of friends was at a restaurant bar and wanted us to hop on by. So, about 2 into our first mar, Garita proceeded to get into a yelling match with my best friend, and threats of fighting her started to heat up. I decided to let this happen, paid for the drinks, and dragged my date out of the place. She then started screaming and yelling at me, threatening me and losing shit to say the point. I was mentally exhausted and full of BBQ, and decided I was offered an offer to give her a ride, and she kept throwing a fit. So I said screw it and got in my car and left while she was throwing a temper tantrum. Go home and walk my dog when a random truck picks up, and guess who is getting out of the truck? Okay? Yup, she returned. The fighting and yelling have turned into crying, apologizing, and more love talk. I'm over it at this point and tell her she needs to leave, and this is over, and I don't want to see her again. Next thing you know, she starts having a panic attack on the couch, and her heart racing, and she has a heart condition and needs to go to the hospital. Well, fuck me if I believe a damn thing at this point, but I'm not about to have someone have a heart attack on my watch. So I take her to the hospital. There, they just give her an IV and some calming oils. It's 3 a.m. at this point, and I'm drained. After this day-night, Horseman came to find out she was diagnosed bipolar. If only the story ended, she would return to her home state, call me and say she was pregnant hooked up before that night. And 4 years later, I still have to deal with this person. Reddit opinion 11. Didn't know it was a date. Had a female friend I knew from high school ask if I would come to hang out with her and a friend for some drinks. I obliged and drove over to her house. When I got there, she immediately asked me to step outside to smoke a cigarette with her. When we got outside, she told me the other guy we were hanging out with was creeping her out, and she wanted me to ask him to leave. I argue it's her place, and she should ask that. She told me she's been trying, and he's refused. I went in and asked him to leave, and after convincing him and giving him $5 for GS, he left. This is where things get a bit weird. I need to preface, because I was in a relationship then, and this girl was well aware of it. After the dude left, she looked at me with the face of victory and held out her arms for a hug. When I hugged her, she started acting like she was having an orgasm. I tried to brush it off and keep my stance, but she kept getting closer and closer. At one point, I excused myself to the restroom while trying to figure out what was happening there. When I returned to her room, she was no longer on T. She had stripped down to a thong and hid behind the door. She tackled me onto the bed and sat dry, humping me and trying to remove my clothes. After a couple of minutes of struggling to remove her so I could leave, I threw her off after throwing her. She asked for a hug goodbye, saying it was the least I could do for her. She tackles me onto the bed. This time, I immediately throw her off and leave. She'd text me every few hours for weeks after that, Never getting a response. I hope she's doing well now, but holy shit, was she aggressive back then. Reddit opinion 12. I met this girl at a local fuel stop back in April 2000. She was wild and sexy, loved rock and roll, and was surprised to price her front row tickets to Kiss as a first date. She was so excited. We talked on the phone for about. The anticipation was plain silly. She seemed completely normal, Al. So these tickets were a chore to get. The only place that had any left was the old Ticket King scalper. I paid $300 for 2 tickets front row left of stage. It took everything I had in savings to get them. So I picked the gal up the night of the show, and she was a little tipsy. I thought, cool. I'll grab some beers at the show and catch up to her. Easy enough. We got to the show and her buzz was intensified. My speech was slurred badly. So I grabbed 2 32 OZ beers and headed to our seats. By the time we got to our seats, minutes or so had passed, and I could tell the situation was worsening. She didn't sit in the share is cool kind of like plopped. I looked at her. She laughed real loud and said, "My legs don't work well." I asked her how much she had drank, and she said about a pint of whiskey. That still didn't add up. So I asked her if she had taken any medicine. Sphenoid, no. Give me 20 minutes to sober up. The opening act played a few songs, and I noticed he was drooling profusely. I stood her up and said, "Let you get you to the bathroom," and that's when shit got nuts. She projectile vomited on about 5 people around us, including me, and kicked over my last beer onto some bundle of wires covered by some kind of rubber speed bump and slipped on it, landing in vomit. I made eye contact with the 19,000 people behind me and walked her to the bathroom. By the time we got there, she was in rough shape, lots of dry heaving, more puke and some salty language to people in her way. She bounded into the room and I went to wash myself up. Well, about 15 minutes ago, a lady came rushing out of the bathroom and screamed, "Who's with this sick girl? She's choking." I rushed into the woman's room, and here was old gal, white as a ghost and puking up the remaining contents of her stomach, laying on her side, convulsing. I ran out and got a nearby security guard to call help. They loaded her on a gurney and turned the stage to a med bay. Once we got in, a nurse came in and asked us a shitload of questions, which my date refused to the nurse. Nurse went to get more help, and all of a sudden, the quiet turned to this roar. It was 20,000 people screaming. Then Detroit Rock City kicked off, and the whole building just shook. I then realized I was not going to see this concert. I might hear it, but I wouldn't see it. Then the medics came in. They hooked her up to a machine, checked her vitals, and asked again, "Have you had any drugs?" This girl squelches, "I love Valium." Guess what she did? 30 minutes later, I was near the nearby hospital, meeting her parents, explaining to them I didn't give her any Valium, just some beer and a joint. I didn't even know she liked pills. She loved the post so much that she had been in 10 hospitals for overdoses, mental instability, and depression. She tried to kill herself several times and stabbed her fiancé with a screwdriver. They are nice people with the saddest looks on their faces. I walked to my car, drove home, and stared at the wall for 4 hours about how I never saw any of that coming. Never heard from her. Gain heard years later that she had died of an overdose. 290 mg. That's how much Valium they anticipate would take. In her purse was a blister pack of 10 mg Valiums. Reddit opinion 13. I was living in the UK at the time. I went out with an intern from work who was a solid 9 from 10. We went to a cheap enough restaurant, then on to bowling. I'm a very socially aware guy. So believe me when I tell you that I was 100% getting doomy vibes from her. She was dressed up to the nines with a nice amount of skin on show. I was thinking all my Christmases had come together. I texted my flatmate to buckle up and put in his earplugs. The flat had paper, thin walls. So she's sitting beside me, rubbing my thigh, and I'm sure I will ride her like Seabiscuit when she makes her move. Alas, not the move I was anticipating. Is there room in your life for Jesus Christ? Me. Yeah, good one. This was greeted with a deadpan stare. If you're ever in the UK, you will notice that they are not real people. At all. She was a recruiter of the Christian sect. A cult even. I got the fuck out of there like my arse was worst. The worst part. My flatmate and friends knew. This sect was notorious for using attractive women to recruit men. Lonely and desperate men. Bastards all. Reddit opinion 14. I met this girl at a local L-dive and she seemed rad. Until she had 6 double grays. We were having and she could hardly stand. So I asked her how she was getting home. She says she's going to mine. I say no. This continues for a few more minutes before I just say I'll drive her home. Keep in mind, I had told her I needed to be home at midnight because I worked the next day and it was already 1 a.m. As I'm driving, she's all over me and getting upset I'm not reciprocating while driving. Finally get to the address she gave me and it's not her place. She gave me a new address, which is not her place, but the middle of downtown. I can't boot this drunk girl out in the sketch area and feel good about the third. The third time's a charm, and we get to her apartment complex. She left out of the car unless I agreed to go upstairs with her. I leaned in for a kiss. Then she unbuckled her seatbelt, opened her door, and pushed her out. She texted me the next day. Thanks for not judging me last night. Oh, I judged you. Reddit opinion 15. Back in high school, I went to her place to help her with the project. 2 days later, we met at the park in her neighborhood. It was okay. It's going pretty well up till now. That evening, I was going home and somewhere after the meeting she got a text. I love you. I freaked out since I had almost zero experience with girls, and it's been only 2 freaking days. I respond, decided that night not to. Isk it and stop while it's still early, and I break up with her over text. Sadly, until it escalates. Oh boy, it escalated quite next. Next, she texted me that she was hospitalized due to a medical drug overdose. I was one of the referees of the attempted suicide. Now, I don't know if that was not, but I've heard it kind of quite suicidal before and troublesome. Freaked out. I couldn't calm myself down for days. It took 6 months for me to stop shaking whenever I think of it. It's been almost 2 years and I still haven't fully recovered, although I'm almost there. Oh yeah, she's alive. I've blocked her everywhere and don't want to hear from her again. So I'd call that a date with a bad aftermath. Reddit opinion 16. Years ago, I went out for drinks with a really cute redhead. I knew her from around town and we were always kind of flirtatious with each other when our paths would cross. So we're having drinks and things are going well. It is becoming obvious that she wants to come home with me. I am very much into that idea and suggest we head out. At this point, she suggests that we quickly swing by another bar down the street to say hi to her cousin before we do that. I, being in a very agreeable mood, say sure. So we get to the bar down the street and her cousin is there. We chat for a couple of minutes. She seems like a nice lady, but I'm looking for an opportunity to move on to the sexiest portion of the evening. It's at this point that her cousin's date arrives. He's a tall, well-dressed black gentleman. I wish I could say what his personality was like, but I never got a chance to find out because it was at this point that all hell broke loose. My date, immediately upon meeting her cousin's date, flips the fuck out. She immediately goes full Hitler, screaming at the top of her lungs in a crowded bar that she can't believe that her cousin's hanging out with an N-word, that she will get AIDS and that their family will disown her. The whole 9 yards. At this point, I'm completely shocked. Looking back, I can't remember seeing any warning signs. Suddenly, I'm in the middle of the most insane situation I've ever been in up until this point in my young life. My date is screaming horrible, racist, filth. Her cousin is crying and screaming back. Her date is fucking furious, and the entire bar is staring at us with disgust. I had no idea what to do. So basically, I just stood up and noped right the hell out of there. Never looked back. Didn't bother to find out how the situation played out and just walked down the street back to the bar I started in. Ordered a double of bourbon, sat in shocked silence, and then walked home. Reddit opinion 17. My first date with my wife was pretty horrendous. First, a little backstory. My wife and I were best friends since grade school and even lived as roommates as adults. One Christmas, things changed and romantic feelings started between us. It took over a year for us to finally do something about it since we both assumed we had one. Cited crushes. Anyways, once we figured shit out, it was like starting on step 9 of a 10-step program. Everything was perfect, but it was mostly just around our house and to ourselves, since we're both homebodies and hadn't told anyone our relationship had changed, just in case. So, we finally planned what would technically be our first date. Only a mutual friend who didn't know about our status change asked about our afternoon, and after hearing our plans, decided to come along at the last minute and meet us there. It's not as rude as it sounds. Our friend group just tags along on trips all the time. So my wife and I discuss things during the drive and decide to screw it. We'll tell him. He'll understand, and we'll have our evening alone. So we showed up in surprise. He had run into a car full of our friends and invited them as well, one of whom also invited her brother and his girlfriend, who also happened to be my ex. Faced with telling our entire social circle our new secret or just smiling and acting like shit was normal, we chose to do the latter. So the rest of the evening consisted of one of our friends getting overly drunk, my ex complaining about everyone and everything throughout the evening and then refusing to eat at the restaurant we chose because she eats like a 10-year-old not going to the concert we planned on going to. Because she eats like a 10-year-old not going to the concert we planned on going to. It's a niche interest for us, and we got outvoted and having to drive home, my drunk friend while another mutual friend attempted to set up my wife with a guy. Once it was mercilessly over and we were both home, we collapsed on our couch and cackled. Only us, man. Only the two of us can cause a night like that through sheer hard-headed social awkwardness. Our second date happened in another town and we didn't tell a soul we were going. Reddit opinion 18. This year, I matched with a woman on Tinder. She worked in the same industry I'm in, is passionate about and has the position I want. So I felt that was a hey, maybe this could eventually be long term. We had great online chemistry. My type of humor and looks, similar hobbies, like the same type of music and movies, etc. Soon, we were texting each other all the time, and it was getting intense. It's starting to feel like I have a girlfriend. We haven't met yet, but it seems we both really like each other and are excited to finally meet. It had been around 5 days of texting. She lived a 2.5-hour drive away, but I go to her city every couple of weeks, so we scheduled I'd go up and pick her up from her back shift in the morning and just head to her place and go from there. I was welcome to stay for a few days at her place until I returned home. I'm thinking, yes, I haven't gotten laid in months, and now I will get it all out of my system with this exciting new girl for days. This is awesome. I didn't have work for a few days, and I borrowed $20 to fill up my gas tank to get to her because I was super broke. Payday was just a couple of days away, so whatever. So I woke up at 4:30 a.m. and drove 2.5 hours to meet her for 7 a.m. at her work. We planned to nap and cuddle until the afternoon, then get up to whatever. I pick her up and am super excited to meet her finally. And I say, hey. I smile and reach over to hug and kiss her. She says, whoa, you move fast, and stops kissing. I feel, what? Oh shit, did I screw up? She tells me she hasn't been feeling well and we should go to the hospital. She wants to go to the clinic and get checked out. Okay, well, I guess I'm glad you stopped me then. Okay, I understand. That sucks, but it's okay. Thank you. Actually, okay, cute. Let's go to the clinic. I'm bummed a bunch, but at least maybe it's just bad luck and timing if she just got a cold or the flu. So we're driving and talking, and through the conversation, I'm more and more, what the fuck is going on here? Long story short, I take her to the clinic. She tests positive for chlamydia, then explains to me she wasn't taking her medications recently and fucked a bunch of different guys. One of the guys was a homeless gay. B, a man who has sex for money so he can bang drugs and needles. She didn't know this. Apparently, she learned it by going through his phone and snooping around when he was in the washroom. They fucked without condoms, of course. I asked her when she found out about this. Oh, about 3 days ago. She didn't tell me because she liked me and didn't want to scare me off. The entire time this unfolded, I kept my cool, stayed positive, and played everything off as oh well. When we get back to her place, she introduces me to her pets, gets naked, and tries to seduce me. And I'm like, yeah, you're hot shit, but yawning. I am so tired because I genuinely was. Do you want to just cuddle for a while? I really need to sleep. I cuddle up with my boxers and shorts on, and she falls asleep. I slink out of bed, gather all my shit quietly, creep out of her apartment into my car and drive away. Once a few blocks away, I felt safe to call and text my friends to please help me. I met up with one of my best friends for lunch with him. He put some gas in my car, laughed his fucking ass off at me and my story, and gave me $20 to help out. I crashed at my other friend's place for several days until I got paid and could finally leave. And yes, Reddit. I am a horny fucking moron. Reddit opinion 19. I didn't realize how drunk she was when I picked her up at a restaurant. We get there and she orders another drink and finishes that before we even get to order food. That was when I noticed she could barely go to the bathroom. I made up my mind then and there to take her home. It was awkward trying to tell the waiter to just give me the bill for what we had so far, and to coax her, almost carry her to the car through a super large crowd of people. It was a large outdoor mall arena. All the while, I felt like people were looking at me like I had just drugged a girl and was forcing her to come with me. I finally get her to her home, and she goes directly to the bathroom and spends some time there. 15 years before, we had been boyfriend and girlfriend, and I felt that this date would be more of a catching up. But she spent the next several hours trying to talk me into being her new boyfriend. She was currently married, but separated. I remembered how we broke up, and there was no way I would go through that again. When she pleaded with me to sleep with her, I was nope. Not only was she an ex, but she was still drinking when we got back to her place. One of the saddest things in my life is what happened next. I tried to come by a couple more times and we spoke and texted often, but the last time I saw her, she was with some low-life drug dealer, and she was using meth again. He chased me off, and I did not return. Several months later, her sister contacted me on Facebook and told me my ex had disappeared and abandoned her life home, only to show up to receive the money for the sale of the motorhome she'd been living in, then disappeared again. There was a super large homeless encampment near her home, and is likely where she met him and is living. A year later, I saw she had been arrested. I checked the jail site often, but then released. At least I knew she was still alive then. I wish I could have done more to help. But looking back, I see I was oblivious to her return to drugs. The few times I saw her, I've never known anyone using drugs other than her and missed the signs. Reddit opinion 20. I was recently going through a divorce, and some friends recommended I go on OkCupid to start dating again. I matched with a girl whom I met at a local tiki bar we both were fans of, and who I was friends with the staff. I got there early and saved her a seat. She walked in and looked great, and we started chatting after ordering drinks. 20 minutes later, we ordered one more to share. I excused myself to go to the restroom, and she did the same when I returned. As far as I was concerned, one of my buddies behind the bar asked me if everything was okay. I told him, yeah, things are good. At first, I thought he was screwing with me, but he finally told me his worry. While I was gone, he saw her slap herself in the face as hard as she possibly could. Not like a light tap, but like a full-on Russian slap contest slap to her face. I still thought he was messing with me until she returned and we resumed conversation sentences to answer a question she posed. She slapped herself as hard as she could in front of me. I stopped with what was probably my jaw on the ground and asked her if she was okay. She continues like it was normal. Yeah, just trying to keep awake. Mind you, we are each a drink and a half in. I suggested closing out I paid and walking the local downtown area, to which she agreed. She was wearing espadrilles high-heeled platform, type shoes for the uninitiated, and turned her ankle, not once, but about 15 times. On the second one, I caught her to break her fall and she promptly shoved me away and said, "I do not kiss on the first date." I reassured her that wasn't my intention, and I was just trying to be helpful. At this point, I'm on this date for science and emotionally removed. I recommend we sit and chat some more, to which she grabs my hands and inspects them thoroughly, telling me my hands were okay. She then shoves her hands 2 inches from my face, asking, "You ever seen nice hands than these?" She then continues about how she has no friends, lives at home early 30s with her affluent parents, and relies on her mom to make many of her life decisions. I'm now thoroughly removed, but I'm still trying to understand her situation. She still seemed a bit drunk, so I brought her to an Italian place nearby. She sat down and blew her nose in her white cloth napkin, old man honking style, like something you see in cartoons when the hanky starts flapping in the breeze. I'm a bit taken aback, but we get through our dinner with much less conversation and several moments of awkwardness. I paid, and that was that. As we leave, she asks me, "Weird that I blew my nose in my napkin like that." I was delicately honest, saying how it's not typical. She responds, "Okay, I never know until I ask." The next morning, I got a call from her thanking me for taking her out yesterday. But because of my interest in history, and because I collect antiques, she didn't feel that she could stand up to my expectations. But she still wanted to be my date, to a party I told her about the previous night that was to have a big celebrity turnout. I thanked her for her honesty and told her I didn't think it was a good idea, as I didn't feel comfortable. I haven't seen or spoken to her since. Thank you so much for watching and for your time. It means a lot to me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I would be happy about a like from you. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. The community benefits. Remember to subscribe to my channel and activate the bell to not miss anything. Have a great day. See you back here soon.